Tonight I'm going to talk about depression or emotions. I'm making this video for a Swedish gentleman that I speak to online sometimes. His Twitter handle is Gullodir. Now I could be mispronouncing that, and I apologize. I'm not the best at pronouncing sometimes. But he was talking about how he had been feeling depressed here lately. He had been feeling particularly black-pilled, is the term that he used. And we got to talking, and I thought I would make a video about this. Now, I probably am not the best person to ask how to deal with depression. I am not the most emotionally stable of people. It's weird, I really don't know what I am. I have some days where nothing gets me down, nothing really pisses me off, But then I have those days where the slightest things can set me off. I don't know how to explain it. I'm not as bad as I used to be. When I was younger, I considered myself tripolar, if that makes any sense. I viewed my emotions as it was either one of three ways. I either felt ecstatically happy, extremely depressed, or extremely angry. And it seemed like it bounced from one to the other of those three, if that makes any sense. I've always been a very emotional person, and it has served me well a few times, but it's also a burden. Oftentimes you don't make the best of decisions when you're very emotional. I mean, I can give numerous examples of how this has affected me in life, but back to depression. I think that I thoroughly believe that the modern world that we live in is built to make people depressed. It's like a lot of times, I know I talk to a fair amount of people online, and I really wish that I could meet these people in real life, it's talking online, having a community or whatever. That's not really, it's good to be able to do this, Technology, it's a double-edged sword. It brings benefits, but it also brings many detriments. And, these online communities, or whatever you would want to call them, honestly, it's no substitute for real life interactions, I don't believe. And it's like I said, I believe that the modern world we live in is just conducive to depression. You see it everywhere nowadays. And depression in men, which of course women get depressed too, but it seems like the depression and suicide rates in men is much higher. And it's very sad. I mean, I get depressed sometimes. Not as bad as I used to. Because there comes a time, I remember when I was 17, I had a teacher. His name was Mr. Blevins. He was my English and history teacher. And I remember him saying that one time when he was younger that he was seeing a girl, I believe is how the story went, but she told him something that he never forgot, and he told us, and that is that the secret to life isn't happiness, because happiness, it comes and it goes sometimes. But the key is contentment, being content with your lot. I can remember him to this day saying that. And I mean, as I've gotten older, I see that it's true. The way to fight depression, I think, is by getting out in nature. That's how I deal with it, honestly. Which I'm not really that depressed much anymore, but it gives me contentment. Going hiking, going fishing, doing anything outside, even working outside, gives me contentment, And that's another aspect, I think, of why the modern world is so conducive to depression, is because a lot of people, and I feel sorry for the people that do, but if you live in an urban environment, and if you are a native European, that is not your native habitat, not at all. Streets and concrete buildings and all that filth. It's not where we were meant to be. So you get out to nature. If you can, get out in the country, buy a place out in the country, live in the country, farm, find hobbies. That is the best way to fight depression, I think. Try new things. You may think I'm not interesting or I don't have any hobbies. Well, find some. You can find some. Making these videos, this is a hobby that I have that I never imagined that I would be doing something like this. And when you try, sometimes I paint, sometimes even going fishing, I grew up going fishing, but once I became an adult, it was something that I did I could count on one hand the number of times that I went fishing between the time I turned 18 up until now, 15 years later. But here in the last couple of months, I don't know how many times I've went, but I've done it a lot, and I'm getting better at it, Painting, any of these hobbies, you're not going to be like a master of anything when you start out. You always have to take that first step. But I think depression is rampant because a lot of people live in cities, and it's not natural. It's completely divorced from our true reality. Now, as to the reasons that a person is depressed, I know, Galadier, you had mentioned that you were feeling particularly depressed because, honestly, your country is being overran by migrants. And this is a very good cause to be depressed. I mean, I understand it. But the key is, really, there's not a whole lot. There's no use in being depressed. What our overlords are doing. I take that back. There is a reason, but you shouldn't dwell upon it because there's not a lot we can do about it, really. And in this matter, I think that Varg's right about the only way to fight this sort of thing, unless you want to possibly end up dead or in jail, in prison, is by leading a simpler life, getting to the country. I think that is the best choice. Because we know that often, political solution, it's pretty much out the window now. And it's a dead end, the way the system is now. Maybe something will come and change it. I don't know. But the way you can fight it most effectively is by being patient and getting out in nature. Living a simpler life. Now, some people, some young men, they're depressed, possibly because they're lonely. They've not met a woman. And we can once again blame this on the modern world. We can blame it on feminism. We can blame it on feminism, the shit that the media puts out, the ideas that they put in young women's head. You can blame that. But it's also, perhaps you're a woman and you're depressed because you haven't found a good man. You can blame the shit that the media puts out and society itself. There's so much in the modern world that leads to depression, in my opinion. But as far as how I deal with it, I look at it this way. You look at our ancestors, even just a generation, 2, 3, 4, even going further back. They lived a hard life. It wasn't easy. Nothing was guaranteed. It seems like nowadays a lot of things are just guaranteed, and I think that's another reason why the depression is rampant, is because civilization just guarantees us everything. So we don't appreciate what we got sometimes. I think that, they had a lot of heartbreak. I'm not saying that everything was good in the good old days. They had a lot of heartbreak. Even the act of childbirth was a very dangerous event a lot of times. There were a lot of children that were stillborn. They died at birth or shortly thereafter. And I imagine this is the worst pain a person can go through. I hope I never go through it. But I imagine this is one of the worst pains that a person can go through. And I can understand depression I can understand a lot of bad things come from that. But a lot of times, and I'm sure, of course, it hurt. It really hurt, and it broke these people's hearts that had to go through this years back. But they kept going, oftentimes. I don't think there was a whole lot of suicide. I think that's more, it happened, I'm sure, but not at the levels that it does the last, I guess, 150 to 100 years, that's not something that happened. Because they were sure they got depressed, but they had to work too hard just to survive, that they couldn't stay depressed or they would die. Nowadays, civilization makes it possible that we can wallow in our depression, and oftentimes, I'm not saying all the time, because it's happened to me in the past. I've gotten depressed over some stupid shit before. But I snapped myself out of it the best that I could. And it don't do to dwell on these things. It's not going to change it. You could think about it. You may feel depressed for a day or two, but you need to snap out of it. You need to pick yourself up and move forward. That's all you can do. You shouldn't let it wallow in it. There's no sense in it. So if you're feeling depressed, my advice would be learn something new, try something new. Go for a walk, go for a hike. If you live in a rural area, start you a garden. Perhaps go buy you some chickens, build a chicken coop. You can do these things if you put your mind to it. So don't wallow in depression, because it's only hurting you. It doesn't make anything better. So yeah, these are my thoughts on depression. Go out, dear. I hope you get to feeling better. Get up in those mountains there in Sweden. It's a beautiful place from the pictures I've seen. It would make you feel better, I believe. So thank you all for watching. Have a great night. Bye-bye.